Guam Legislature. Just for the information of the public, the stakeholders were provided notification of this oversight hearing on the 17th of March. Was the first notice that was distributed, and thank you to our media partners for also sharing the information with the community. The second follow-up, second notice was dated March 23rd and was distributed again to the stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, before I proceed with any of the presentations by the Guam Police Department and by the Chief of Police, I'd like to recognize my colleagues, the Vice Chair of the Committee, Senator Tom Atta. Thank you very much, Senator, for joining us. To his immediate right is Senator Mary Torres, Senator Dennis Rodriguez, Senator Tommy Morrison. To my immediate left is Senator Narissa Underwood, Senator Brad McCready. To her immediate left, and then to his immediate left, Senator Frank Blas Jr. and Senator Tony Atta. Thank you, Senators, for joining us this afternoon. Chief, on the first item with regards to the Administrative Plan of Action for the Forensic Science Division, I just want to mention and highlight that the committee did receive copies of the bi-weekly report on the 11th of March from your office, which highlighted the activities between the last oversight hearing, which was conducted on February 25th and March 11th. And then I would like to ask you to please provide us an update on the activities with regards to the Forensic Science Division, inclusive of the crime lab and the evidence facility.
First of all, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson Senator Frank B. Aguon Jr. of the Guam Committee on Guam U.S. Military Relocation, Public Safety, and Judiciary. Also, good afternoon, Senator Tom Atta, Vice Chairperson, Senator Mary Torres, Senator Dennis Rodriguez, Senator Tommy Morrison, Senator Narissa Underwood, Senator Brad McCready, Senator Frank Blas Jr., and Senator Tony Atta. First of all, I'd just like to start by thanking the Guam Police Department members that are in the audience too, who also are attending the hearing, Colonel Sayama and our staff here, because they pretty much, since the last oversight hearing, have been really making strides to help work and mitigate some of the issues that were highlighted during the last oversight hearing. There have just been some accomplishments made, and I'd like to thank, again, Captain Kimberly Santos, and I assigned also Monica Salas, who, for the special projects to coordinate with the FSD staff. They've been really working collaboratively with the FSD staff, because there have been a lot of progress, and there are some documents here I'm going to be providing to the committee, additional documents here. There's been some good news in terms of the FSD for the crime lab. We've had some quality in the correction on the evidence control section. There was some reports that there's a low level of asbestos, yet plans will still be implemented to ensure the threat is mitigated. And we have the attached report here on that asbestos findings. Also, there was some good news too in terms of the quality of the spores, the molding at the crime lab. And it's not at the level 2 that presents a potential threat, but we still want to mitigate that, and there's a push to expend funds so that we can have remediation over there at the crime lab. We've been having an opportunity to extend and offer to anyone in the centers, again, tours of both the crime lab and the evidence control facility. I believe Senator Frank Blas Jr. had a chance to go to evidence control section. And we even had the Attorney General's representative, the Chief Prosecutor, Phil Tadenko, attend and did a tour of the evidence control section. And this was, I think, a major, observation for him to actually have some dialogue with the Investigations Bureau Chief Captain Manny Babata and Lieutenant Ron Tysino, the Division Chief for FSD, because they had an opportunity to look at a lot of the evidence that was stored there, something that was really readily available to be disposed of. And the AGs, of course, have given their cooperation that they're going to move on that and support us to clear out a lot of the evidence that are subject to disposal. There were arrangements, of course, within these last couple of weeks too, of course, to remove some of the DMRO equipment, other storage, and these are all indicated in some of these reports here already, and the progress reports. So progress was made, and I've actually issued also a moratorium in obtaining more DMRO equipment. This is the military access equipment, because what had happened in the past is it resulted in using up a lot of space at the evidence control facility, and space that's really supposed to be for evidence that's supposed to be stored there. Lieutenant Taitino and Captain Manny Rubata were working closely, again, I have said it, in coordination with making adjustments with the crime lab in terms of work request forms that have been submitted. And then, of course, Colonel had discussed with me about the judiciary in terms of re-evaluating and taking a look at the how they would reimburse us.
Can you please change your mic? Yeah. Switch it over, see if the other one works.
Hello, testing. It's not working. Testing. Switch it. Testing.
Just pull it a little closer.
Testing.
You're good. Thank you, Chief.
Yep. So, as I said that Colonel Siyama, we've had a brief discussion again about reevaluating again the judiciary about that proposal of having discussions with them about the reimbursement, the $100,000 that's given every fiscal year. And with that, I'm prepared to go ahead and answer questions from the committee on any other issues concerning the Guam Police Department.
Okay, let's just a couple of questions in regards to the solutions that or the resolution of these particular issues. Now, you said that the study reflected low levels of asbestos at the evidence facility.
That's correct, Senator.
Are there mitigations or mitigating efforts that are being implemented right now as we speak to ensure that does not affect any of your personnel that work in that environment?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. The other one is the crime lab. In terms of the operations and your personnel, where are we with regards to continuing the mission of the crime lab?
There have been arrangements, and that's why I think Monica Salas can probably expound on some of the discussions that were made in terms of discussions with the University of Guam and using Marine Lab for just the drug analysis. And also actually looking at and discussions with Mario Cotta, GCC president, for use of some space for administrative functions for the crime lab personnel.
So are you saying that the discussions are still ongoing, or do you already have personnel and operations relocating?
Those discussions are still ongoing.
What is your estimated timeline to complete the discussions and decide whether in fact you're going to take advantage of those opportunities?
Right now, if I can call Monica Salas, because she can pretty much give a more realistic timeline on that.
Ms. Salas, if you can identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Monica Salas. I'm the Chief Criminalist with the Guam Police Crime Lab. So, could you please repeat your question?
The question is with regards to the discussions with UOG and GCC and continuing the mission and the operations of the crime lab. What are the timelines that the chief is working with in terms of either relocating those operations so that he can address the concerns with the crime lab itself?
Yes, the coordination has already been completed with the University of Guam to relocate not only the drug analysis services, but also the serological services. These are the two services that require respiratory protection. And so we are already in communication with two professors down at the University of Guam. We have done a site assessment. And next week we're going to go down and set up the laboratories, relocate our equipment, and see if there's enough power source and workspace for us to do the work. Right now it looks like it does, but we want to make sure that everything is stable as far as our equipment relocation is concerned. And then once that happens, we can resume services. So best timeline would be 2 weeks. Barring any unforeseen circumstances, if there's not enough power and we need to route power in and other things like that, I would have to see what those issues may be before I could give an alternate timeline.
Okay, so within 2 weeks you should have the lab testing capability relocated to UOG Marine Lab.
Yes, and
Okay.
once our equipment is relocated and we're ready to start work, we won't know until we fire up our instruments if there are going to be any additional issues that need to be addressed at that time.
Okay. Now, with regards to your personnel and where they will be working, all of your personnel are going to follow the crime lab testing capability, or are they going to be relocated elsewhere?
No, the rest of our services do not require respiratory protection, but our equipment do require humidity and temperature control.
No, but your admin personnel, are they
Yes.
going to remain at the crime lab, continue to
Currently,
work out of that
they're
environment?
remaining at the crime lab. We're looking, Dr. Okada gave us a space to look at, but there's not the internet infrastructure for us to relocate our fingerprint unit and our Veripic photo lab management system.
So that's still ongoing.
Yes.
That's an
So the
ongoing
rest of
discussion.
the services are continuing out of the Forensic Science Division at this time.
Okay. Do you have the two AC units been installed?
No, they have not yet.
Not yet. What's your estimated timeline for the two AC units? And this is in reference just to the administrative personnel work environment.
The two split units right now are at GSA they're undergoing the procurement process. Concurrently, we looked at the option of repairing one of the chillers, and we just got some information back that all the parts are on island. Chiller 2 is able to be repaired, so once a purchase order is issued, it can be repaired within 5 to 7 days from day one of work. And I'm looking at that as a more viable option. It's about the same price, and we're looking at two split units to cool just the admin area versus repairing chiller 2 and recommissioning air handling units 1 and 2, which will cool the entire laboratory, and then we can move into assessing the exhaust system.
Okay. No, I'm not referring to the overall facility and the chiller systems and whatnot. I'm more concerned about the mission. At this point in time, your personnel, the safety of your personnel working in that environment, or has a decision been made to relocate the work environment, the crime lab capabilities, and we've already discussed that about the marine lab option. Now, I'm also referring to the administrative personnel that work out of the crime lab. If ongoing discussions, and you just alluded to it with GCC, that there are ongoing discussions with regards to the president of GCC to relocate possibly the administrative staff of the crime lab, at least in the interim. So how long is that conversation going to take place? When do you anticipate completing that discussion?
That discussion has been completed. The issue is we are not able to relocate our administrative staff if they don't have the tools to do their work.
Right.
So there's no infrastructure for them to move their computers. There's no internet infrastructure for us to relocate our services with that regard. So that comes back to us and our IT people to go and assess GCC's system to see what it's going to take to move over the communication system, so because all of our our automated fingerprint identification system, our photo management system, and the other things that our internet run are operating out of GPD's infrastructure.
Okay, so Chief, what is your estimated timeline in terms of possibly relocating your personnel?
Yeah, well, that's why for that problem in regards to the administrative staff to be doing their administrative operations. Right now, they're still at the lab, and they're contending, of course, with the heat, especially when it comes to the afternoon. That's why we want to get those split airs that are already at the GSA. The plan is to hurry up and get them installed, and that way that will rectify them having that administrative personnel transfer over to GCC, and at least that could be a solution to that, while we're also working on fixing the chiller 2 that's able to be repaired, and then after that start moving into another other initiatives that ensures that we have backup split airs and another options that they're offering, that the Monica and Captain Kim are offering to me in collaboration with the FSD management as we look down the road to ensure that we can rely on something that's not going to break down within a couple of years or years.
Okay.
And it's something
I just wanted to ensure that we understand, the members of the committee, as well as the public and the people that work at the crime lab, that we understand a timeline in terms of when the operation is going to be resumed elsewhere, and then we'll deal with the long-term repair and upgrade of the existing crime lab facility at our next oversight hearing. So I mean, because that is going to require a longer-term solution in terms of eventually addressing that. So I'm more concerned about the safety of your personnel, and ensuring that the mission continues at the end of the day in terms of making sure that the crime lab activities, regardless as to where they're located, continues. Senators, any questions with regards to the Forensic Science Division? Yes, Senator Tom Adams.
I'm just trying to follow all that that was said, and it seems that you've made progress in finding interim solutions, so you can get back on your feet again and start doing the sort of work that the division should be doing. And I guess I gather that eventually you want to go back to the lab after the air conditioners are fixed and all that, right? So, is funding going to be a problem in all these? And the concern that I have is it's sounding like there's going to be a lot of effort to move into these temporary locations, the Marine Lab, the GCC, and all that. And once you move in there, it's going to like, oh God, we're going to have to move again. And so what has been done to ensure that funds are going to be available so that we continue the progress, and so that the interim solutions do not become the permanent temporary solutions?
And thank you for that question, Senator Ada. And these are one of the things that we've already received $60,000 in reimbursement from the judiciary in terms of some of these repairs and maintenance and requisitions of the air conditioning, the split air con, which we're going to be using, and of course looking at the repair of Chiller 2. Tomorrow, actually, I have a meeting with the finance team, the governor's finance team. These are some of the things that are going to be discussed in terms of the funding needs for not only what we're doing in terms of the crime lab, and the challenges up there in terms of making sure that we have that necessary support from there, but we're also looking at the relocation of the evidence control facility, and there's even some specs that Lieutenant Ron Tatino have already completed to me. That's going to be a real major issue. That's why I think it's critical that tomorrow, when I do have a meeting with the governor's finance team, with Bernie Artero, these are some of the things that they know that I'm going to be asking and requesting when it comes down to anticipating some of these costs.
Thank you very much, Senator. Senator Underwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a follow-up to the procurement of air conditioners, do you have a projected timeline for getting that completed?
I know that right now it's at GSA. Captain Kim has been communicating with Claudia Faggi over at GSA, and I've already approved of it, and I know it's just a matter of it being processed from GSA to draw down on the funds that we already have in terms. So I believe that if that thing leaves from GSA and it ends up with that FSD is notified that it's already went through the approval process, there's nothing that's wrong, we followed all the procurement procedures and then I believe it could be within a matter of a week or 2 weeks of starting to get the ball rolling on that.
So there are a couple of remedies here. You have the split air, but then you were also talking about the larger system being repaired. So you're talking about within 2 weeks for the temporary relief.
For the temporary acquisition of split airs.
Of split airs. But then you also do have a larger goal.
There's a longer range, taking a look at this Chiller 2 and other options too, when it comes down to when we'll actually review this whole process of what do we want to do at the lab in terms of how complex it is to keep the entire lab cool, and the thing about the options of going to split airs as backup systems, but also looking at other air conditioned type systems that are more manageable than a chiller system. And these are some of the decision package that they're going to be providing me, because there are several people from both the business sector that have approached us and said they're recognizing the situation, and to their generosity, they're willing to come over and help, and also do diagnostics on the chiller, and then giving us what we should consider in terms of all of a sudden, throwing so much money into a big complex system, and then all of a sudden it's not reliable and it breaks down.
Okay.
Yes.
Senator, we did prepare this summary. We did prepare this summary, and I could just read what the status of the laboratory was. Based on the assessments that have been occurring in the past 2 weeks with regard to the crime laboratory facility, what has been determined, can I go ahead and?
Yes.
Yeah. What has been determined is that Chiller 1 it's going to cost much more money to repair than to replace. Chiller 2 does have many leaks. However, all the parts are on island, and it can be repaired to be to provide cooling for the entire laboratory. Air handling unit 1 needs to be assessed for alignment of the pulleys. Air handling units 3, 4, and 5 need to be assessed for electrical issues. Air handling units 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 need general maintenance prior to restarting for the system. The transition cage for pre-cooling unit 1 needs to be repaired or replaced due to corrosion. Variable frequency drives need to be installed in pre-cooling units 1 and 2 to match the rate of speed for air handling units 1 and 2. Electrical conduits have been exposed to moisture due to the condensation problem for long periods of time, so the electrical needs to be assessed to determine the extent of corrosion and the cost for repair or replacement. The exhaust system is not functioning now because it's based on sensors, the sensors that rely on airflow. So at this point, we don't know if the exhaust system will resume once the airflow resumes and the sensors start to pick up airflow, if the exhaust system will turn on. So once airflow is restored, then the exhaust system needs to be evaluated for its functionality. Of course, mold has been identified in different areas of the lab. However, air quality and mold spore tests have been conducted in the administrative area and found that there's no threat to the personnel at this time. So the options that we had were to, as you know, install the split units in the administrative area alone, or repair Chiller 2 and recommission air handling units 1 and 2 at an estimated cost of $13,700. That's for Chiller 2 air handling unit 1 and 2. Once the Chiller 2 is repaired, it's projected to work for 1 or 2 more years, and Chiller 2 has the capacity to cool the entire lab. Once operational, air handling unit 2 can be turned on to cool the administrative area. Then air handling unit 1 can be turned on at a later date to cool the laboratory side of the facility once the mold issue has been remediated. These repairs are estimated to take 5 to 7 days from the start of work. Then, of course, the other option was to install the split units, which would only cool the administrative area, does not affect the exhaust or cooling, at also estimated cost of about $14,000. Then, finally, replace the chillers with a new cooling system. There were 3 options to replace them with direct expansion units, DX split package units. That cost has not been provided to us. We're still waiting for a quotation. We can replace them with chiller units. The same chiller system that's there, that's going to be at a cost of $340,000 with an additional cost of installing a water softener, which is still to be determined because we have to provide the average gallons of water per use before they can determine the size of the water softener required for the laboratory. So that cost is going to be more than $340,000 once we find out how much a water softener is going to cost. The third option is to install direct expansion solar units with dual power, island power and solar power. That estimated cost is at $197,000. We're looking at the benefits of both options, the upfront cost versus the long-term cost and the maintenance cost, and to weigh all these 3 costs long-term and see how it would benefit the department and what's the best option for us to make sure that this situation does not happen again.
Ms. Solis, can I please request a copy of that so that we can run copies for our senators?
Just one.
Yes, please.
So it's really obvious that a lot of work has been done, but at the end of the day, we would really be interested in, would be the bottom line or the end product, the projected completion of all of this, so that we would get the lab back working where it should be? Do you have any projections at this point?
Well,
For the completion,
yeah.
for the renovation and the repair and so on?
Well, this is a lot of work that's going to be required. So, the next couple of months, and I'm saying months, is going to require a lot of, these, workers or these, vendors that are coming in that that accept some of these jobs to do some of these mitigation procedures. And that can, of course, have some disruption into some of the operations of FSD. So we're talking about just for the next couple of months of some of the work being done, but in terms of completion, I would have to get back because, again, there's no guarantees. Even when we do say that Chiller 2 is repairable, as she said, there's something about the airflow too to see whether it would still operate. So that's why the guarantee portion of that option for 14,000 is the split airs as backup. Those are for the electrical, the electrical capabilities of the crime lab. You certainly can have those split airs installed there. She said admin area where it will only cool the admin area. But I've talked to the previous division chief for forensic division, and sometimes he doesn't look just like at the admin area. He looks at other parts of that. That's a larger building there for the installation of split air. So that's also currently being explored too.
If I may clarify on the memo, there's a price quote there of $52,000. That was before I was informed that they were going to go with just the 2 units in the administrative area. So the $52,000 quote and the memo that you will be provided was the original cost estimate for cooling the administrative area.
Actually, in this case, and that's why I confined much of my line of questioning to the short-term fix in terms of addressing the mission, because a lot of this we will follow up with another oversight hearing with regards to the forensic science division in about a month and 2 weeks, primarily so that we can continue to track this. At that time, hopefully by then you would have a more definitive long-term solution in terms of how the crime lab will be up in an operation, fully operational in whatever timeline is required. So I do have Senator Rodriguez, Senator Blas, and Vice Speaker Cruz, who are our next in line senators. We have just been joined by Vice Speaker Cruz and Senator Espadon. I'm going to request, with all due respect, that our questions be confined to the topic at hand, because there's a few other issues that we would like to discuss with the Chief. Senator Rodriguez, you have the.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Chief, Monica, Colonel. I'm not going to go back and ask the same question that was asked about what's the timeline, because it's the same thing over and over. I think, as I said last oversight hearing, we're going in circles, and we're going in circles again today. What you have shared with us today about the assessments and what the problems were, these are things that we all knew already. Since 2013, you had reports that you provided to me that indicated these were the problems with the crime lab. I'm focusing my discussion on the crime lab. And so all I'm hearing today is that, okay, we're going to assess this further. We're looking at this is how much it's going to cost. Tomorrow you meet with the fiscal team. What are you going to tell them? What are you going to tell the fiscal team? What is it that you need to get this resolved, resolve the way it should be resolved?
And I think some of the discussion I'm going to have, of course, with the fiscal team is, as an appointed director of the department, I take full responsibility and accountable. I'm accountable for everything besides the FSD, the entire Guam Police Department. But the kind of problems that are presented to me are the kind of problems, and I would just quote off of what President Obama says, are the unsolvable problems. But I think the problems that that the crime lab has had in terms of just the crime lab at FSD and also the evidence control, there are some certain problems that are there that are solvable. At the first line, that doesn't have to reach to the top. I mean, there's some mitigation that's taking place in there in the evidence control lab. So I think that's how it's going to be broken down into those components with the finance team to say, what is it, Chief, that you can do right now with the talent that you have, with the staff that you have that doesn't involve any particular cost right now, because there's already people stepping up to the plate and resolving that. You even have your own resources to do some disposal. There's some government resources that are coming to us. Those are just some of the things, Senator Rodriguez, that I'm going to be having in the conversation with the finance team tomorrow. There are a number of things that are that could be resolved already.
Yeah.
That's
So
what
Chief,
those
there's really no concrete plan in terms of, we know what the problem is, we've known what the problem is for many years, and the concrete plan is we're going to do this. Whether it is to get the different sections you need to get out and move to temporary locations, and once and for all say we need to get rid of those the air handling units we have, the chillers. So there's no concrete plan, right? Yes or no? Just yes or no. And because I have a follow-up.
Yes, of course, they didn't have a strategic plan of this happening. These are just some of the things that have just accumulated.
So no, we
throughout
don't
the
have
years,
a concrete plan on how to move forward.
Not a concrete
No, okay.
plan.
So at least we got that off. And I said in the last hearing, I have a problem when you have professionals like Monica who are doing things that she's not. We don't pay her to do these things, to go and you have other person are running around trying to figure out where we're going to go rent an evidence control section. What the specs are. We're wasting a lot of time. Time that we can use them for what they're supposed to be used for. And so again, I'm not going to keep on. I'm not going to go rant on. But I'm asking in the next update that you give, the next oversight hearing that. This happens, when we have issues brought to the court and then we're placed on, under federal receivership. It's got me to a point where maybe we have to just, step in and do something to resolve this once and for all. So I'm asking you to please, the next time we come around, that we have a concrete plan in place. Thank you, Chief.
Okay, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Rodriguez. Senator Blas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Chief, Colonel, ma'am, thank you for being here today. First off, I want to say condolences on the loss of one of your own very recently. Mr. Taitano was a very good man. Chief, thank you also as well for the opportunity to be able to tour the evidence control room. And I will tell you that I was, lack of a better word, shocked at the condition, the deplorable condition that it's in. But before I get into that, just let me clear one thing. And thank you for the summary. My question is, are you going to do this to the regular procurement procedures, or are you doing this through some special proceedings to be able to get this thing done in the time frame you want it done?
The repair of the chiller 2?
Yes.
Yes, they all have to go through the standard procurement procedure. So right now we have prepared the price quote to submit the requisition through GSA.
Okay.
And then once that goes through the GSA process and goes out for bid and we get the purchase order, then we're going to move forward. The long-term solution as far as making sure that all of the entire environmental control system is operational, that's way above the $15,000 limit. So that we have to do the bid specifications and go through an RFP process or even a design build process to see what ultimately is the best solution for the laboratory long term. So that is going to take such a long time. That's why the recommendation is to repair chiller 2, because the repair of chiller 2 will give us 1 or 2 more years, give us time to look at a long-term permanent solution.
In the meantime, what's the time frame do you think that you're going to get all of this done?
I'm sorry.
In the meantime, what is the time frame that you think you're going to be able to get all of this?
Just the chiller 2 part,
right,
that's already in the process of, we got the quotation, we should be submitting the requisition by the end of this week, and then the rest of it will have to go through the GSA procurement process, and that is...
based on your experience, how long would that take?
Based on my experience, it could take a long time. Yes.
Okay. Now, if you were to rate by percentage everything that you have to do, that you can do, that you're supposed to do with your crime lab right now, all the services that you can, at what percent are you at right now in being able to provide services of all the services that you can and are supposed to provide?
Yeah, it's difficult to break it down to percentages because the throughput of analysis for each of the different units, they're at different rates.
Right.
The crime scene operation is still ongoing. The fingerprint and latent print operation is still ongoing. The photo lab therapic operation, photo management system, that is still ongoing. What has been suspended is the serological services and the drug analysis services. So for those two services, as I explained earlier, by next week, we should be setting up our equipment and relocating to the marine lab. And then once everything is set up and we can see and if there's nothing wrong with the power or there's nothing wrong with helium gas supply and whatnot, we should be back up online with them in 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
So percentage-wise, I could say crime scene and drug analysis provide the most services for the laboratory. And since one of those is still operational and the other one is shut down, I actually could not give you a percentage overall laboratory operation.
But you're not running at full.
We're not
capacity
running at
right
full.
now.
But the only two services we're not able to provide right now are serological services and drug analysis services.
Okay. How long has this issue been going on?
The suspension of the drug analysis
Yeah.
services, that occurred January when the chiller system went down. In response to the lack of airflow, the exhaust system went down, so it was not safe for those services requiring respiratory protection to continue.
Now, since January, how many cases or how many times were those? Was there a necessity to be able to perform these kind of tests, but could not be performed and had to be farmed out, or was it farmed out, or was it suspended?
There are no cases that have been,
Okay.
to my knowledge, that have been redirected to other laboratories. At least not that I've been informed. Most of the cases have been, the attorney generals have, both in CNMI, Guam, and Palau, have been able to offer an explanation based on what I explained. Services may resume in best circumstances 2 to 3 weeks. And so they're able to hold off at least that long before we can give another update on the status of the cases.
So we're relying on their cooperation in being able to defend this or be able to provide this reasoning in court to prolong cases.
I'm not familiar with the court operations.
Okay. Chief, I want to go now to the condition of the evidence control room. How long have you known that control room was in that condition that it currently is in?
The evidence control room.
Yeah.
When they took a tour, I think when Senator Rodriguez took a tour of the evidence control room and first highlighted, there were rat feces there, and I believe he indicated down in his letter. That's the first time it was ever communicated to me that it was in that state. The that communications of stuff that's for and suddenly discovered. There was no efforts to make to do any work requests for pest control or anything like that. It was during that time period. So that was.
So that was very recently.
That was just.
That was January 31st and February 1st.
You were never informed in 2011 and 2012 and 2013.
No. Now in 2013,
Right.
there was a proposal made.
Right.
And this was already to relocate the evidence control section, right? And there was an assessment there, right? And the copy of that assessment that was provided, right, to for the public safety meeting, right? Because it was the previous FSD management. Copies of that was made and it was channeled from the division chief to, from the operations chief to the division chief of forensic division, and no copies for that were made for me in terms of the results of any the stuff when it came down to rat feces or anything like that. there were structural defects of FSD that was listed when I eventually got a copy of it, so that we could have a baseline why we needed to hurry up and do a relocation. That's why it was within that month of January when I called for a meeting with Senator Rodriguez and other stakeholders, Friends of the Crime Lab and other stakeholders, the AG's office, to discuss some of the things that are happening with Forensic Division, which includes the evidence control section.
Do you have, for obviously Monica's with FSD, do you have anybody here from evidentiary control that's in the audience?
Yes, Lieutenant Ron Tatino is from FSD, but he covers the...
Captain Manning, you still the chief for the... Mr. Chair, can I ask that?
Yes.
You can request.
Mr. Chairman, as we wait, I just want to, and not to interject, but Chief, there was a presentation done in 2013,
Yes.
December 2013, that was presented to you, I believe, and also to the Lieutenant Governor about the condition of the evidence control section. Wasn't it indicated at that time that there was rodents and feces that were detected in the evidence control section? And also there was what you provided me was a report from the Department of Public Health that indicated the presence of these, of what Senator Blas was asking. So I just want to refresh your memory on that.
Chief, did you want to invite Lieutenant Taituno up front? And Senators, obviously, a lot of this, if we want to reflect back to October 2013, when in fact written documentation and some photos were provided to the Chief, that's going to extend this particular oversight hearing. I think that the intent here is after the initial oversight hearing, which was conducted on February 25th, where are we going to rectify this situation? And that's where the update has been provided by Ms. Salas as well as the Chief. And we want to ensure that we follow this process through so that the crime lab is fully operational, Senator Blas, because you had the opportunity to take a look at that facility, and you know the critical nature of why that operation has to get back in place, aside from a temporary relocation. So, Chief, I will ask, I will allow Senator Blas, if it's okay for you to pose a question, if you would like to, one question to Lieutenant Taituno, and then we'll proceed with our conversation, please.
And Captain Pac-Man, Manny, come on up. Sorry, Leme. Captain Bubalta. Only very few people know you're Pac-Man. Well, now everybody does. Can you just go ahead and state your name?
Hey, my name is Captain Manuel Ibabalta.
Lieutenant Ronald Taitano.
Gentlemen, question that I have, and I guess I'm just going to draw back to my prior law enforcement experience. Are you required to put in weekly and monthly reports on operations of your division or your section?
Yes, sir. Monthly reports.
Okay. Your monthly reports reflect also the conditions of your work environment and some of the issues with regards to it?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been reporting that there is the conditions that the crime lab is currently in? How long have you been reporting that that's been like that?
Well, just to make it clear, Senator, that I just took over the IB chief as the acting IB chief in January of 2014, and Lieutenant Ron here as the division chief for forensics, October of 2014.
Okay.
But prior to that, we did submit monthly reports on the conditions of the building.
And what did those monthly reports ever indicate in as far as what the conditions are and what are some of the problems in the reports? I mean, in the facilities?
As far as the evidence control section, I did not resubmit the problems because they were already submitted based on the document that was presented in 2013 to the Lieutenant Governor.
Okay.
What I did in my monthly reports was highlighted the items that were problems and my recommendations for solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And I continuously reported the same thing month after month because there was no changes.
Okay, so there has been reports then,
Since I took over as the division chief.
and according to the information as provided by Senator Rodriguez, there was a 2013 report.
Yes, sir. I was aware of that report when I came in. My personnel, inclusive of the late John Titan, had advised me of that. I obtained a copy of it, reviewed it, and again, when we met with Senator Rodriguez, I found out that that was part of the package that was turned into him. So again, when I assume commands, I do both line inspections and administrative inspections. So in that, coming into that knowledge, I started reporting, and I highlighted everything from personnel to policy to facility problems
Okay.
since I took command.
Okay, since I've been there last, which was what, 2 weeks ago, what's changed?
What has changed is the DRM equipment that you saw in the vehicle bay has been completely removed. And now what we're doing is we're starting to stage the stuff, awaiting for AG guidance for disposing of the rest of the evidence that is allowed to be disposed of.
Well, and obviously, you know, I mean, I really want to get into some of the issues with regards to, you know, in as far as whether or not we've got proper control of our evidence there, but for the sake of confidentiality and sensitivity of it, maybe this is a good, you know, I'm just, and obviously, you know, I'm concerned with regards to the security as well as the integrity of a lot of the evidence that is being stored there. I found it I found it a novelty to find that one of my cases was still being stored. I think the last time I did a case was, John, when was that? 1995? Okay. And let's talk about the bullets. How long have we cleaned up that termite-infested bullet?
We cleaned up that room, Senator.
Okay. And my understanding, and you verified it and everything, that it's not going to affect any current case because that is, in fact, those things were supposed to be for disposal.
Yes, sir. Those cases have already been cleared through the courts, so they're awaiting for a transfer to EOD.
Okay. Now, why did I have to walk into the room like that and see to a corner, you know, a pile of unexpended shells, you know, that were termite ridden, and the boxes were termite ridden? How long has that been like that, in that condition?
We're looking at the photos from 2013.
So it's been there since 2013.
Looking at the photos that was provided, it's the same photo.
Okay.
And what has happened during that time is the late John Titanel was the only person assigned to that unit. That's a section. And intermittently, you've had some sergeants that were assigned in and out of the division that were the officer in charge. But you're talking about one full-time staff to manage that section and all the work that encompasses of vehicle impoundments and releases, the various categories of evidence collection, transferring evidence to the courts for court testimony, transferring evidence back and forth from the Forensic Sciences Division for analysis. One person was responsible for that for all these years.
Okay.
So, I mean, I can only believe prior to my arrival, when I put some additional personnel detail down there, that that's what happened. And one of the responsibilities of when you bring evidence to court, even more recently, is the courts will not accept it, so that officer has to stay down there the whole time. Cannot be excused, cannot transfer evidence over,
okay,
like we used to do in the past.
So, Chief, let's go back to the presentation that you provided, that you were made aware of this whole thing in January of this year?
When it came down to the some of the the rat feces, the first that I've ever heard of rat feces over at Evidence Control Section, of course, I wasn't made aware of that until Senator Rodriguez did his walkthrough at Evidence. 2013, when this presentation was made at the public safety hearing, I wasn't there at that public safety hearing.
Okay.
But there was always plans, because I always knew.
Well, you weren't there, but you were the chief.
Yeah, of course
Okay.
I was a chief. But I always knew, and that's why I said from the beginning, I'm accountable for, and responsible for the actions of anything that happens in the Guam Police Department, regardless of whether I know it or don't know. I don't have that information. I'm not at that particular site and don't see the exactly what Senator Dennis Rodriguez had pointed out there. having you. When you ask the question regarding to monthly reports, monthly reports are good, but if it remains in a shared drive and is not sent to me, then that makes a big difference. But I think we cleaned a little bit of that up, Senator, in terms of making sure communications doesn't just flow from the lieutenant to the captain to the colonel to me, to make sure we clean up that. And part of a lot of the big things that have changed, I think the lieutenant hasn't really said. There have been some changes that are made. Now all of a sudden we do got a work request for pest control. We knew we now have the light bulbs start running, that we have to start understanding that we take care of their shops, and that whether you have one person, the investigation bureau consists of about 20-some police officers, and it just takes a little bit more energy about the officers doing that. And part of the factors too, also holding accountability, and I'll let you know this, Senator, is by administrative investigations that are done to review this and take a look at who dropped the ball.
I understand, Chief, but you were made aware of a lot of this stuff in 2013. It is now 2015. What happened between 2013 and January or today to be able to deal with those issues?
Well,
I think that maybe going back to the monthly reports, whether it was on a shared drive or whatnot, I understand, I know the structure, and I know how the information flows in the police department and how it should flow, how it's supposed to flow. And if it flows properly, I feel very uncomfortable, and I don't, the idea that you only knew about this since January. Whether it be rat feces or whether it be termites, or whether it be the lack of locking mechanisms necessary to make sure that our evidence control room is properly secured, those still fall under your watch. And I don't think that the gentleman sitting next to you or behind you are not going to bring this up to your attention. I know that they have. And my concern here, maybe I've been waiting for you to say something about this being a dire strait, this being an emergency, this being something that needs to be taken care of yesterday. I haven't heard, as far as your possible discussion, your discussions tomorrow morning about whether or not you were going to deem this, is this in fact an emergency or can be deemed an emergency declaration?
And the response to that, Senator, is I know that especially the evidence control section, Senator, Lieutenant Tatino put in a monthly report that I recently received, taken out of the shared drive. It was dated for January's monthly report, but then you turn the next page, it's actually December. So there's a little bit of a
I see where you're going with a lot of that, but you know what? At the end of the day, again, you were told this since 2013. And now I can see Senator Rodriguez's frustration. So we're going around in circles here.
Yeah.
We're planning on when we're going to have our next meeting. We're not planning, and we're not talking about what should have been done. Now I'm going to ask, do you consider this, or have you now considered this, something that you may want to ask for a declaration of an emergency?
I believe as it stands now with the work that's being done both at FSD and the progress that we're making both at the crime lab, no, I'm not ready to declare a state of emergency. I think we have the administration to marshal already the resources that we can to go ahead and deal with both the crime lab and the evidence control section, Senator.
Well, you brought it up now, okay? 2 weeks ago, I had the the chief of staff of the lieutenant governor with me.
Yeah.
That's why I said 2 weeks ago, what has happened since then?
Yeah.
Okay? There were a number of things that could have been done, or that should have been done. And I'm going to stay in my lane with regards to directing as to how it should be done. But okay, there is an emergency situation in your forensic science area. There have been reports. There are people that are around you that want to help you, that want to make sure that these things get done. But it hasn't gotten done. And I fear you know, that if this conversation goes a little bit more, I fear that what we could lose, the cases that we could lose in court, because then you're going to have attorneys who are going to question the credibility of the evidence. Then we're going to have a bigger problem. So, you know, I'm hoping that your conversation tomorrow does express the need to act a little bit more quicker than, and not have Ms. Monica over here have to worry about a process where it's going to take a little bit longer. Because as we're speaking right now, there could be an incident that is occurring right now that's going to require serology and is going to require other services that we can't provide. Then what are we going to tell the community? Okay?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Blas. We have Vice Speaker Cruz, Senator Torres, Senator Tommy Morrison, and Senator McCready. Vice Speaker Cruz.
Thank you very much. Chief, what year was this built?
The old crime lab was T-Gen area. It used to be, you know, where the evidence control section that was built about
the
50
new one
years ago.
That's
The new one was built about 2008, possibly about 2008.
And as part of the building, is there not a relationship between the police department and the Judicial Building Fund to protect the asset that has been built? Is there some kind of a relationship with the Judicial Building Fund? I'll ask it directly. How much has the Judicial Building Fund or the judiciary been making available to the Guam Police Department for the upkeep of this building that was built with Judicial Building Fund money?
Well, on the memorandum of understanding, the judiciary is supposed to reimburse us for every 100,000 that we spend. They're supposed to be forwarding to us 100,000 and have it in an account for us. What I've heard from the previous administrative service officer from 2008 to about 2011, there wasn't the 100,000 given to the Guam Police Department since the time
Has the Guam Police Department presented to the judiciary $100,000, $50,000, $40,000, $30,000 worth of billing or invoices for the repair or the upkeep of those air conditioners between 2008 and 2011? There
have been some maintenance, and there have been some procurements made where we were reimbursed by the judiciary, and sometimes some of that number has amounted up to about $7,000-8,000 in reimbursements.
Before 2011, when you came in, was there any outstanding balance owed to the Guam Police Department from the judiciary for invoices presented to the judiciary for repairs or maintenance at this crime lab?
I'll have to get back with you and look at that, because I haven't gotten any information on any monies owed by the judiciary to GPD when I first took over in transition. Well, Monica would like to respond because she's been there before me in 2010. She could have some of that information.
Good afternoon, Senator. The time frame you're speaking of, there were no reimbursements made because the building was still under warranty. We moved in February 2009. The building was under warranty for 3 years. So all of the issues that we were experiencing with the air handling units, with the Johnson control system, the train computer control system, the chiller units were all being handled by the contractor under warranty. So it wasn't until 2012 when we had to address these issues on our own was when we discovered that there was not available cash in the account to do the maintenance that was required. And then that started an 18-month-long process of working with the judiciary and BBMR to get, it started with $10,000 that Captain Babauta was able to work out, $10,000 reimbursement, but it still wasn't enough because the maintenance for not only the chiller, the air handling units, and the environmental control system, but also other systems that require in the laboratory for the laboratory to function, like the water systems, generator, and whatnot. The $10,000 was not enough, and so then Lieutenant Caldwell and I started going and talking with the judiciary, and it took quite a long time to get the whole process so that the $100,000 was then loaded up front.
And since when has the 100,000 been loaded up front?
It became available fiscal year 2013.
And in 2013, how much repair and maintenance did you undertake?
From 2013 to 2014, it was an estimated, if I recall correctly, and I could be wrong, but it's close to $27,000 in repair just for the air handling units. Then we were fortunate enough to be the recipient of a Department of Energy grant, where the Department of Energy and the federal funding did come in and do service for the chiller units. But it still wasn't enough because the air handling units it wasn't enough to keep the system running.
You had 100,000 loaded up front, and you were able to use 27. What happened to the 73? Was there still 73 in there?
There were other projects that we were undertaking, such as the maintenance of the water system, maintenance of the generator, perimeter control, trash pickup, lighting, and
were
whatnot.
you able to complete all of those projects with the 100,000 that was being loaded up front?
It's quite difficult to explain because some of those processes, it was difficult to get vendors to come in or to find vendors who had the knowledge. The short answer is we were not able to use the entire $100,000.
And that was for 2013,
Yes.
2013, 2014.
Yes.
For
And then
2014, 2015, was there another 100,000 that was made available and
Not-
loaded up front?
it was not another 100,000. What it is each year the money's loaded up to 100,000. So it's just 100,000 flat per year. It doesn't roll over.
And how much did you use then in 2013?
In 2013, I have to look at the exact numbers.
But you didn't use the full 100,000.
No, we did not.
You could have used the full 100,000 to make all of the repairs that were in the report that was filed with the Lieutenant Governor.
These repairs were not required in 2013.
I thought the report was December 2013.
No, wait, this
No,
report
not
that I just...
not that report. The report that was presented to the Lieutenant Governor in December 2013, that the PowerPoint presentation that
With the chiller
Oh, the
units,
evidence
that's what
control.
I was saying. We were fortunate enough to be the beneficiary of federal funding through the Department of Energy, so we did not have to use judiciary funds for the chiller repairs.
And so,
At that time.
did you make all of the repairs that were necessary to the chillers?
At that time, yes. However, anybody who's worked on those chiller systems understand that it requires a great deal of maintenance.
I know.
Yeah, so...
I was Chief Justice at one time, and we had that in our building, and I know how much it costs and how it's very sensitive, and you have to be down on top of it all the time.
Yes.
Was somebody on top of it, and were there maintenance people coming in monthly or every other month to look at the chiller system to keep it up? Because I can recall when we moved into the building 25 years ago that there was somebody constantly there looking at the air conditioner. And if memory serves me right, the system that we had at the judiciary is almost the same kind of system that you have at the lab, right?
Yes. Oh, actually, I'm not sure. If
No,
it's
but
the
I
exact
mean,
same.
it's that same kind of big, gigantic chiller system that takes up the fourth floor of the judiciary. I mean, it's huge. But I'm just saying, it needs constantly, constant attention. And were we providing it? Were you getting people in? You were not using the 100,000 every year, were you?
We were not able to use the 100,000 each year.
But you had major problems. Why couldn't you have used up to the 100,000 to address those problems, and then the following year get up to another 100,000 to address what wasn't taken care of the previous year?
Because the money was available beginning of fiscal year 2013. That was 2013 into 2014. We are now in 2015. In fiscal year 2014, we used $67,000 of the $100,000. And there's still projects, about $40,000 of projects outstanding that are still going through the procurement process. So when the money became available, I did the best that I could with the knowledge that I have to get as many vendors out there and as many maintenance people to give us quotations and see what they could do. Now, I explained at the last oversight hearing that one of the issues we had where we have train units, and to find a subcontractor that could get a good quote from train without train charging them up front was very difficult. And so it was difficult for me to get vendor responses for the chiller maintenance portion.
So we just didn't do it.
I would not agree with you on that. I did my best with the
No,
knowledge that I
I
have.
understand, but because you did your best and you couldn't find a good quotation, the repairs weren't made, and consequently, we're at this situation now.
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, maybe if at some point through your office you could request for all of the invoices and all the requests that were being made during 2012, 2013, and 2014 on repairs to the building, I think it would answer a lot of questions for some of us on what efforts have been made and what. Did at any time the judiciary refuse to give you guys any money?
Up to the $100,000?
Yeah.
No.
So it wasn't an issue of cash, as you had said earlier.
No. Okay, I may have misunderstood your question. I don't know how, I didn't understand how the financial part of it works. I know I would submit requisitions, and I have a bunch of requisitions that went in, and I would be informed that there's no cash available, and that's what prompted me and Lieutenant Caldwell to go talk to the judiciary to talk about having the cash up front and available for us.
And after you got the cash up front, were you able to address those issues that you didn't have enough cash for prior to that caused you to have to go to speak to them?
Yes.
Did you address those issues?
Yeah, we were in the process, but if you could try to understand, there was a learning curve on my part. I mean, I don't know how air handling units. I do have a better knowledge of it now, but to find out air handling unit is not working, and then I go down and I try to find out what's wrong or try to find a vendor, and just going through the whole process of learning who to call, what the problem is. There was a delay there because I had a learning curve too in a field that is not my area of expertise.
Which brings me to my next question. I've looked through all the documents that you've all provided to me. I don't see a signature or the name of any mechanical engineer whose services have been utilized to make a determination of what it is that we are trying to do with this building.
As far as the repair of Chiller 2?
Or repair to Chiller 2, deciding you're going to take out that whole chiller system, putting in the split air systems.
We do.
For a building as large as that, it would seem to me that the services of a mechanical engineer would and should be necessary.
Yes, we do. We can provide the cost estimates given to us, which is what this memo was based on as far as the cost is concerned, as well as the issues.
Who prepared it? Was it a mechanical engineer?
I don't know what their certifications are. I know I did provide mechanical plans for the laboratory to the people that we were requesting to come and assess this system for us. And then after providing mechanical plans, they provide with us a cost estimate for repair. So
Chief,
we've also...
did you confirm the needs and the plans, or at least the proposal that you have here, with a mechanical engineer to determine whether or not this is the best course of action?
Vice Speaker, the information that the special projects Captain Kim and Monica have presented me were based on their discussions with individuals who their occupations, they've had some experience in terms of working with chiller systems and air conditioning systems.
Yes, we
But
also...
we don't have we didn't get their signature on any of the documents. This is just based on some of the discussions.
I understand, but what I'm saying is that when that building was built, and for the tens of millions that we spent on it, I know that there was a mechanical engineer whose services were contracted to design the system that was going to be put in there. Did anybody go back to that mechanical engineer
We
and
did.
ask to reconfirm what was being suggested as the proposed plan
As far as the plan there is now.
that you're having now? Has this been approved or been reviewed by someone with some mechanical experience? As you put it, you don't have it, and this is the learning curve that you have. As brilliant as the captain and the lieutenant are, and the chief is, I wouldn't even, I don't even know how to use my remote on my air conditioner.
Yes, Senator.
And so I'm just trying to figure
this-
out, I call in the guy from JWS, something's wrong with my air conditioner.
Yes,
And
we're
he
in the
says, "Push
process
this
of
button, sir."
we are in the process of exploring the long-term solution. This memo here, the recommendation is to repair chiller 2. That system has already been in place and has already been designed by a mechanical engineer from the very beginning, design build of the building itself. So we're just repairing something that has already been designed and thought to have would have thought to work properly. Now, if you look at option 3, where it says replace the chillers, it says the benefit of these options are still being explored, which means we're going to have to put out requests for information from these mechanical engineers for design build options.
Yeah, I have
So-
no problem with the fact that you're going to repair, all right? I was looking at option 2 and 3, and the just chucking that huge system that was put in and deciding you're going to put in split airs for the size of that building, really seriously, someone with the proper credentials needs to come and confirm that that's necessary.
Yeah, you see the options, but the recommendation is not to install the individual split units at this time. So we need to get our services back in line. The recommendation, based on all the information that we've gathered, was to repair chiller 2 that would get us back online the fastest at the lowest cost. Okay, so the other options as far as installing split units as a backup option, that can be decided on later. But of course, the chief has to make the final decision. This is just our recommendation to the chief based on cost, timeline, and our need to get our services back online for the community as soon as possible.
And I just want one thing re-emphasized so that the chairman and I don't go jumping all over the Chief Justice. The judiciary has not at any point refused to assist you by providing you money. You've had $100,000 in an account up front for a couple of years. One year you used $27,000, the following year you used $63,000, but you've never completely expended the $100,000, so they've not denied you money that you could have and should have used to keep your units running as well as the units that we've now had in judiciary. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary.
Yes, as I became aware of the issues that we were facing procurement, beginning 2012 when the warranty went out, yes, the judiciary has been absolutely helpful to us and in our requests. And, they tell me what needs to get done, and we go and we do it, and we provide all the paperwork. And so that's why the process was so long, because there were so many, we had to go to the BBMR, we had to go through our finance, we had to go through the Department of Administration, as well as the Judiciary Comptroller. So trying to coordinate an action with 4 different agencies it just took a long time. So
Thank you.
yes, they have been absolutely helpful to us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Speaker. Just for the information of the body, the memorandum of understanding between the Judiciary of Guam as well as the Guam Police Department is that they have up to $100,000 annually as a form of reimbursement. And Ms. Solis is absolutely correct. When they realized that, in fact, the general fund was not able to initially front the money, then they worked it with the judiciary so that they can get $100,000 up front. And then it's always subject to reimbursement subsequent to that, Mr. Vice Speaker. So that's one of the reasons why they have not been able to utilize all the funds. And judiciary, as a matter of fact, in the last 3 years, has stood by and have questioned why the funds were not being requested and documentation was not being provided for reimbursement. So
Yes.
that's the process, and I'm glad you were able to clarify that, Mr. Vice Speaker, that is not the judiciary withholding the resources. It's just that up to $100,000 available
Yes.
for upgrade, maintenance, and upkeep of that particular facility,
Yes.
but it's based on a reimbursable process.
Yes, and if I may
So-
clarify, the 67,000 was in reimbursements, and as I said earlier, there's still, last time I talked to the finance person, about $40,000 in requisitions right now. So we're close to the 100,000 for fiscal year 2014. I mean, I'm working the hardest that I can to use all the resources that are provided to us to keep the laboratory functioning properly. I mean, this is my career and it's my passion, so it's not something that I'm just going to sit on and say we have $100,000 and I, just watch it go away.
Thank you, Ms.
And
Fowler.
just one other thing, Mr. Chairman. Chief and ma'am, if ever the judiciary balks at providing you funds, please call me.
Thank you,
Because
Senator.
between the two of us, we will make sure that you get the requisite funds. That's why I want to make sure that it wasn't they that were holding things up, okay?
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Former Chief Justice. Okay, we do have Senator Torres, Senator Tommy, and then Senator McCready, and then we're going to move to the next subject on the agenda. Senator Torres, you have the floor. Okay. Senator Tommy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand the timeline. I have when you brought up the thoughts of where we're going with this, and I'm trying to figure out if it's where we'll be 5-10 years from now with this issue. And I'm reading the report, and it's hard to see that some of FSD personnel or the discussions that are being made within the report is that we're temporarily relocating to an alternative site to address some of these very critical objectives within this division, right? But when we talked also about concrete plans, I still don't feel that even if whatever came back in the next oversight meeting that maybe members of this committee will be completely satisfied, because we feel that this issue might reoccur. So my question is, I remember discussions of a central headquarters or precincts, and there was major plans in the works. My understanding to include having a home for FSD, right? And I just want to understand if that is still in the works, and I know there was multiple funding mechanisms to assist in that central precinct. So when we're talking about concrete plans, I want to refer to that, because 5 years from now or 10 years from now, I hope that this is the direction that we're going. So Chief, do you have an update if that's, as far as this issue is concerned, is that the ultimate, or you could say concrete plan in 5 years or 10 years that we're looking at, that we're still going in that direction while we do this temporary fix?
I know we were talking about in our police headquarters plans, there were several different kind of sites, and I was actually attending some of the meetings with different chief of police about headquarters, and a lot of the planning and the square footage of 173 square feet of space, 173,000 square feet of space for headquarters involved looking at a place for our evidence control section, and I believe during that time, already plans were made to build a brand new crime lab up it, and working with the Guam Community College because of the talk and discussions about how you get forensic science students, and you're in the Manila where you have UOG and GCC, you have that connection there between education and forensic sciences. So in terms of what was planned in terms of square feet for FSD, it was a little bit more. The discussion was moving more toward having an area for evidence control section. That's why I think one of the pieces here was the planning of the military buildup and the revenues that we're gonna be assumed as Guam would benefit from on the military growth here. is that we put in our projects, besides a GIGO precinct and a central precinct, but we put up there in front as a priority the evidence control section for the Guam Police Department, especially with the importance and significance of what the evidence control section of FSD stands for, to hold so much properties, not only just evidence, but it stored some of our regular properties that are not of evidentiary value for safekeeping.
So, Mr. Chair, I just would ask, maybe for sake of having this as an item to continue to stay on top of, because I remember, I hope the discussion is not fading. I know there was, I've been in a couple of meetings in the past, and I remember this was a big effort moving, and I think this was by design to take care of a lot of these issues. I know when I look at the pictures, it just tells me that even at the forefront, maybe it wasn't even a place conducive for such a very important process. So I think, Mr. Chair, if that could be something that could be an item on your as far as the discussions going forward, that we could, if we're looking at concrete plans, I think that is something that if we're looking long term and where we're going, I hope we can work towards that effort. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Morrison. We can certainly add that to future oversight hearing agendas. Senator McCready?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm the last speaker on this issue, and I'm not sure if the questions that I have asked have been answered, but I'm going to ask them again if they were. First, I would like to commend, I guess this is from Captain Santos, this report. So, the two of you guys, I'd like to commend you guys on your hard work, because it was said earlier, I think Senator Rodriguez said that this isn't what you guys signed up for the police department for. It's kind of thrown on your backs. So, and I know this is a tough public hearing for the chief, but I don't want it to be about the entire police department. And so you guys are doing whatever resources you have available to you to make sure that you get this thing done. To no fault of your own, you're placed in this position. So I want to commend you on that. I want to make sure that, and I think the panel and the committee will agree that we're not blaming you guys for anything. We're just asking tough questions to the boss. And so, but it does look like we are having some progress made when it comes to putting pen to paper and finding what the problems are. Now, finding the solution, that seems to be a whole nother issue. And that's where I want to ask my next question. And this question comes from some of the expanded answers of Senator Rodriguez, Senator Underwood, and Senator Blas. I caution against the department in chief of projecting a timeline that is not obtainable. That is, what I hear today is some of the questions that are being answered to this panel are trying to tell the panel what they want to hear to avoid another tough question, a follow-up question. I think that's wrong. I think, and Senator Blas hit it was the hammer when he said, if this goes through the government procurement process, we cannot put a timeline on this, because if there's a protest in the process, this thing could last years. And so I don't think it's fair to the police department, to this committee, and to the community to promise a timeline that we really can't stand by. And so when we go into the concrete master plan, if you would, as Senator Rodriguez stated, can we address that the timeline doesn't have to be what you think we want to hear, so the questions stop? Rather, the timeline should be what we think a reality timeline would be obtainable. Add in a RFP process with a protest or IFB, things to that nature.
That's why I did not include the procurement process. It says 5 to 7 days from the start of work.
I understand,
So
but
it's
I'm just saying that
extending
the questioning that we're getting here kind of seems to differ every once in a while. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not blaming you for it. I'm just saying the total questioning. Also, one question that I didn't hear asked is, how did we get to this point? And And that's the question that I ask, because I don't want to be back here in 4 or 5 years. Well, I'm not saying myself. I don't want the legislature to be back here in 4 or 5, 8, 10 years asking the same questions with the same results, with the same type of report from a captain of the police department and yourself. So how did we get here, and how do we avoid this in the future? Because this can't happen again. Do you agree, Chief?
I agree. This can't happen again. And, you got the commitment from this administration, from myself, and from my staff, command staff, especially the FSD staff. They want to see things improve in terms of old issues that have arisen in terms of the forensic science division, the challenges that they've had. FSD, as I said in the first oversight hearing, I start off by saying they've been through a long history in terms of relocation. They were at an old crime lab where Pedro's Plaza was at, working in an environment that was different from where the new crime lab is at. The old crime lab, where its evidence control section is a 50-year-old building, and evidence control facility was never part of FSD, but just merging it, integrating it into FSD created a big mission for FSD. There's been sometimes some talk about how sometimes we can get into this kind of situation in terms of running into problems and then it accumulates. I remember Warren Buffett once said that, the decay of business, and this is almost like government, the ABCs, arrogance, bureaucracy, and complacency. And I admit, as the person who is accountable for the direction of the department and trying to put out the fires and take care of all these different challenges, I admit sometimes we have to reflect back and say, are we making sure we're making the right decisions when I'm taking care of my shop all the way up? Are we making sure the communications improve? We need to really perfect the communications within the department and everything else, because we're all a team here in the police department that have to work together. I can't do this alone. I need the support of my staff with me to deal with these challenges like FSD and these other issues that are going to be discussed today. And that's the way that we won't be having to come back here again if the team as a whole works together to address these important, significant issues that have been discussed today.
That's a good segue to my next question. And could you pass that over to the Colonel? The Colonel, thank you for being here. My last oversight hearing with you guys, I thought that it was important for this police department to move forward in certain aspects, that the chief and the colonel would have to lead by example, have to get along, and have to move them together. And you just said it, you can't do it without your left or your right. Are you taking the advice? Because last time I was here, it didn't seem as if the colonel had any input. Is the colonel have more hands-on now? Have you given him more responsibility to take the lead on this? And are you guys communicating, getting along, and moving the police department forward in that respect? Because I don't think it can work without that. Is that happening, Colonel?
Well, if you're putting me on your oath, sir, there's a lot of work ahead in getting that done. I don't feel that
Are you a part of the process?
Not completely. Not
So no.
as much as I would like to.
Okay, so do you consider that a problem?
Yes and no. Regardless of whether I'm placed into his trust, I go and meet with the folks anyway. Prior to coming here, met with the folks, so I know what the answers were. That hopefully the answers were that you, as a panel, would ask of us. I do see as a problem that, we talk about ways ahead, and the folks I talked to this morning are talking about how much it's going to cost to rent space for the problems that we have today, most especially the evidential control section. Now, we can't afford that. Now, is renting a space the answer? And are we moving in that direction? I'm not sure. I'm going to let you know, I'm not sure because I don't think it's happening. I don't think we're putting that effort in getting that funding to get there. I believe that the answer to this problem, and to answer the good Senator Morrison's question before, because I was part of that process, we're trying to, with Gita and getting a headquarters started, which was inclusive of evidentiary control, and that did not materialize. Now, again, it's not going to happen today, not going to happen tomorrow. Is the communication better? Yes, I'm not going to lie about that. However, there's still a lot of things that need to be fixed, and I don't know if that's going to be happening as we move forward with our careers. But those are the things that I feel. If you're asking, yeah, we still got a lot of ways ahead. But as far as from my level down, we don't have issues with that.
But would you and I'm going to steal this line from Senator Blas. I'm going to stay in my lane because I'm not the chief of police and it's not my agency. However, we are tasked with overseeing your agency, and I'm on that committee, so I got to ask the question. Do you feel like you could be more of a part of helping the process rather than sitting on the sidelines?
Most definitely, sir.
And you're not being part of the process?
Not as well as I would like.
So, Chief, you have how many years experience? 32?
20, going on 28 years, sir.
28 years in the department. Master's degree?
Yes, sir.
Criminal justice?
Yes, sir.
There is no better person that you could use than the man sitting to your left. You just said it, please. You cannot do it alone. So my question every time we have an oversight hearing with the Guam Police Department, and I've worked with you, Chief. I've always had open dialogue with you, is how is the Chief and the Colonel getting along? And and the way I see it, if you're not using your resources, such as the Colonel, to help you find solutions to these ongoing problems, then I don't think we're doing our job. I don't think we're doing what's best for the people of Guam. And that's protection, absolute protection. And we have a crime epidemic on this island. And he's a resource. He's a commodity to your department. So are the people sitting behind you. Every officer, they're commodities. I just gave away 7 certificates to the officers who saved the gentleman in the burning car this afternoon. They're commodities. We need to treat them like commodities, and we need to use them as resources. And he's not being used. We need to use him. We need to get along with the Colonel. Colonel, I don't have a personal relationship with him. Strictly professional. I didn't meet him until I became a senator. So this is not a setup. I haven't talked to him in months. But you can sense there's a problem when there's almost 2 hours gone by and the Colonel has said nothing. There's a problem. That's a problem. And I beg you, Chief, to use your resources. Please use him, because the next oversight hearing that we have, I'm going to ask the same question. And I don't think the answer, Colonel, is our communication has increased this much. We need to get him involved. We need to get everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McCready. Senator Tomata has requested one question, and then Senator Underwood, and then we're going to proceed.
Yes, my final question. I just got actually 3 quick questions. Senator B.J. Cruz had asked for invoices of repairs that were made in the years 2013, 2014, and 2015. So that was one request that he had made. I would like to add to that request, and you've indicated that you have sent down some procurement documents down to GSA. Since since I guess Captain Santos has been on board since February 13th, can you send also then documentations that have been sent down to GSA? Sometimes GSA gets the short end of the stick and everybody just says, yeah, well, we sent it down to GSA. when did you send it down, and was there an exchange that, well, this needs to be corrected about? So please provide that documentation. And while I got you on, maybe you could just ask, when was the last, like for these split units, when did those get sent down to GSA?
The requisition, Senator, was submitted last month, and as of last week, the only feedback that I got from our supply officer was that it was keyed in, so it's in the process.
It was what?
It was keyed in, account numbers and everything, and maybe it's over at BBMR or somewhere in DOA office.
Okay. All right. Okay. The other thing is, Ms. Salas has indicated that, you apparently, when we repair the chillers, that's the only time we'll be able to then make an assessment of the air handlers and all that stuff. And there's all these sequential steps that must happen. Now, has GPD retained the services of mechanical engineer to make all these assessments, so that when you finally go out for a bid or whatever for repair services, it's clearly laid out what all the services will be?
We've requested the assistance from the Department of Public Works, and their engineers have copies of our mechanical plans, and they're being studied at this time. The system, from just the one or two conversations I've had, I have his name in my phone, is that he really needs to become familiar, because it is something that he needs to study.
On top of the other things that he's already doing.
Yeah, because there's so many things that are integrated within the system, and it's all controlled with Medisys program and other things like that. So absent the program, the mechanical engineer has to study how we can get the system back online and functioning on a manual basis for now.
Sounds like it's going to be a while before he figures this one out.
I've provided plans to different mechanical engineers from different companies, as well as the Department of Public Works, and it's just something that they need to study before they can provide any feedback.
Has there been any consideration given to going back to the manufacturer to see if services can be retained too? I don't know, but it seems like everybody's guessing.
No, Senator, we did contact Johnson Controls to see if we could have the program reinstalled and recover the computer system.
Okay.
It's over $100,000 just for the computer program. That doesn't include the programming and further, not customization, there's another word for it. Because when we first got the program, they had a programmer come out to make all the adjustments for the building. But even if we do get the software and we do get a programmer out there, the different components are not functioning properly. We would waste money to have them come out and then try to balance the system when the valves are not working properly, the sensors are not working properly. And so that's why the best financial option is to revert back to a manual system for now.
Okay. And my final question is, I guess you have entered into an MOA with the Marine Lab to use their laboratory space, and also for space at GCC. Is that correct?
Well, with the discussions there, Monica and those guys have been communicating with the University of Guam, and when they reached that, they've already gave the full support that they could be using the lab, for that work. They'll be able to go ahead and generate an MOU so that it's regulated and make sure that the work, when it's returned back and they relocate back to the crime lab, that's left in the same condition it was.
Okay.
When
My concern is, I'm sure that the University of Guam and GCC is accommodating you guys, and at some point they're going to say, we want our lab back because we've got our own work to do. And so I don't foresee that, once you move in there, that's it. You're going to have squatters' rights. They're probably going to want you out of there probably sooner than took you to get in. So but that hasn't been nailed down yet, right? As to how long your tenancy would be up there?
The Guam Community College has offered us up to 4 months to use their space.
Okay.
The University of Guam has not given us a deadline as far as how long we can use. However, they did say if they have a graduate student that needs use of the laboratory space they're offering us, then they would, let us know, and we give us ample time to relocate our services
So with
out.
just GCC alone, it looks like it's probably going to take you up to 2 months by the time you move in to get in there, and they're talking about just allowing you tenancy of about 4 months. So I guess
Yes.
it doesn't. It's really not. It's a real stopgap measure, but certainly nothing to give you enough breathing room. So.
Yes, that's why when I weighed all the options, or we weighed all the options, repair of the chiller 2, once that all the parts and everything is available on island, we have the funding available, we can get that up online, and we would not have to relocate our that part. We will not have to utilize the Guam Community College and be worried about their timeline.
Just one final question. I know that when, I know that there's a lot more to the procurement of the things that you need than just, walking it down to PD and turning in the documents. I guess BBMR has to load the money up and all that stuff. Is anybody actually staying on top of that and reporting back to you saying, Chief, they're sitting on it. It's been 1 week already and nobody has keyed in anything. Is anybody staying on top of it?
With that, that's why when we were having our meetings on Fridays to discuss any of the issues, the representative there would be our ASO or our administrative service officer, so we can see
Chief,
to make
you're
sure.
just having your meeting
Yeah.
this week or next week, and that requisition was in a month ago. Nobody has been staying on top of that. I mean, if the situation is really critical, I would think you're going to station a cop there and tell him, follow this thing, or you're going to be wearing bracelets.
Yes. That's right, Senator. And our Bureau services, both the support division, Lieutenant Mike Arcangel is taking care of coordinating with FSD and any support they need for any of the logistics with airport and DPW assistance and support for the lab. But Major Fred Chargloff, who heads the Bureau services, is working in terms of any of those procurement requests that FSD submits, so that and we're tracking it from my own office to make sure that we're discussing it to make sure it goes through with BBMR and DOA. And Captain Kim also, as part of the special projects committee, briefed up on that too.
All right.
Additionally, GSA has a dedicated buyer for GPD's procurement, and so that would expedite the process and alleviate some of the issues that we experienced before during our procurement or attempt to procure services.
But they're
and
not the
prepare.
sole player in the process.
That's
so
right.
That's the problem.
Yeah, but it helps to have a dedicated buyer for our agency now.
Thank you, Senator Adams. Senator Underwood, one final question, then we'll proceed.
No, it's actually just a comment because I was concerned about the level of relationships and trust and communication and the quality of communication that seems to be prevalent or had been implied. I'm just speaking to you, Chief, and also to the Colonel, that it really starts with the heads, right? That if both of you are not in sync, then the rest of the body is going to be out of line. So the communication and the relationship and how to go forward has to be both ways for both of you. I believe that you do have a lot of people who are committed to the mission, and we have here Ms. Monica Salas, who has articulated such detailed progress of what has been made and what efforts had already been made, that I am just amazed that in a short time, even though it's only 2 hours, that you've really educated me quite a bit. And so the concern that I have is not about the bureaucracy or what, but about relationships. And so there has to be a level of trust that needs to be established. It starts with the top, and from that point on, the rest no matter what distrust has occurred in the past, both of you have to work together in ensuring that you move forward, because that, and it's a two-way street. Just like a body, the head would only be as good, our head will only be as good, be able to see and hear and speak, as the rest of the body provides blood and information to the head. And it's the same thing. The head can only provide direction to the rest of the body if you communicate clearly to the rest of the body. So we have to shift our analogy. You're all interdependent. Even if you change the head, if the rest of the body doesn't change, the next head will encounter the same problems. So it's a total system we're talking about. I'm really just speaking to that, because you'll be back here and everybody else is fighting within, and the rest, you know what? No matter how articulate, Ms. Salas, you're going to be, it's going to be the same thing. And even if a different person, even if you are changed, it's going to be the same thing. So it's going to require that kind of commitment. It's really going to require that kind of commitment to let whatever hurts, whatever distrust, for us to move forward together. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Underwood. Senators, we're going to proceed with any outstanding concerns, and I have a few items that I would like to request information from the Chief. Chief, first and foremost, where is your ASO?
The acting administrative service officer right now is Dora Flores. Ovi Nauta had resigned already her position.
She resigned her position?
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of the Freedom of Information request that was forwarded to your office on the 12th of March, my office has yet to receive any response from that, despite providing an extension. So do you have any documentation that you're prepared to present to the chair?
Senator, I assure you it will be, we're getting the documents. It should be presented before the end of the day if I can get back to my office after this.
Before the end of the day. Yeah. Now, what is your status in regards to the information provided to the committee at the last oversight hearing was that on April 30th, the retro payments will be remitted to your law enforcement officers.
Yeah, we were looking at the end of April.
The end of April.
Because, again, as I shared, the governor wants to make sure that everyone who is owed, that retro paid is paid and paid accurately, because we don't want to overpay or underpay in terms of the calculations that were.
Do you know what that amount may possibly be as it applies to?
I know it's about. I know it's. We're looking at the area of possibly about $1.7 million. I believe, or something. $1.7 million.
Okay, on the other issue with regards to the promised compensation for civilian employees, that amounts to about $250,000, and you responded to my office on the 9th of March providing that information, so I appreciate you giving me that information now. Does the department have a timeline of closing that obligation?
At this time, because I have a meeting with the finance team tomorrow, I can probably get back to you in terms of talking about the projected timeline, especially if it comes down to some of the revenue, the funding for that to meet those debt obligations, Senator.
Okay, so by tomorrow evening or tomorrow afternoon, you'll be able to provide
as soon as
an estimate as to estimated timeline. And if you can provide it in writing, that would be preferable, so that, in fact, I can disseminate it to the members of the committee and the legislature.
Mr. Chair?
The other component is the overtime obligation, in which Judge Barcina signed off on the 6th of February. And at our last oversight hearing, you were given up until about this timeline to be able to meet that obligation. Where are we with paying our law enforcement officers?
I know when that's the genesis of the meeting tomorrow again that I have with the finance team, especially with the 12 officers we are obligated to pay. We were really committed to pay those 12 officers as the court order had indicated. The other 200 officers that will be affected by that 40-43, that's actually what some of the major discussions are going to take place tomorrow. Again,
Chief,
if I can update
is
you.
the Office of the Attorney General involved in this discussion?
Yes.
Because this was a court order that was
Yes.
signed by the judge.
Yes, they are. They actually represented us, but they also are sharing their position with the front office in terms of so that they know.
So what is the action of the Office of Attorney General? Have they filed a request for extension, or are they contesting the ruling of the judge?
I believe it.
Because the
doesn't appear-
timeline has expired.
I believe it doesn't appear that they're contesting the payment of the 12 officers, and I believe that it's still a little bit being explored in terms of the other 200 officers, in terms of seeing the administration's position on those 200 other officers that are affected, because that's about $1.5 million too, and they just really want to make sure again that if they're owed that from the 40-43 hour litigation issue, that it's that that everything is accurate in terms of the calculations for that roughly costing about probably $1.5 million, and the periods associated with the claimants and that, the original 12 officers, because the other 200 officers would be like a class
Chief,
action.
the issue I have, and I believe I know that we have a former judge and a former Chief Justice in regards to judgments that are rendered by the court. So that's why I'm asking if the Office of Attorney General was actually involved in any discussion with regards to the court order or the judgment that was signed on February 6th by Judge Martinez, because that 30-day timeline that was granted by that court order has already expired. So in that case, after your discussion with your finance personnel, I do need a response in regards to how that particular issue will be addressed and how the department will be proceeding forward.
I'll submit it to you in writing after tomorrow's meeting with the finance
Okay,
team.
and the last item before I open it up to the rest of my colleagues, and Chief, obviously this is an issue that has been covered extensively by our media partners in regards to the overtime compensation, and one of the biggest issues and the statement that was made is, and my biggest concern is with regards to the officer himself, regardless as to who it is. The officer's well-being in working such long hours without relief. I believe that an officer must have adequate rest and nourishment to perform optimally in his job. Now, my question in regards to this is, why was this officer not properly relieved, considering the circumstances? And what is the optimum amount of hours an officer should be on duty prior to being relieved? Can you please respond to those questions?
If we're referring to that officer,
Yes.
the one on the news that accumulated
That's correct.
over $50,000.
We're referring specifically also to that officer, but I believe this statement applies to all of the officers, because if we're concerned about their well-being and their ability to perform optimally, then we need to understand exactly what's the optimum amount of hours an individual or an officer can work before we as a community and the officer, there's diminishing safety provision in terms of being able to carry out his or her responsibility. So I think this comment not only applies to that individual, but really to the workforce.
Everything is about safety and making sure that these officers who work, on whatever mission they have, whether it's executive security or a patrol officer or a detective, that they get enough rest, that they don't work these long hours and accumulate that much amount of overtime.
So what is the optimum amount of hours an officer is expected to work?
43 hours is anything over 43 hours would be considered overtime, or they can actually have the option of CTO, compensatory time off. And this is just my opinion, because I've been in a situation too of racking up $3,600 worth of overtime one time within 3 months, and it's stressful when you're being held back and your supervisor tells you, and pressures you and says, we don't have anyone to stay
So
back every week.
on a singular shift,
You don't want
on a
them to
singular
go
day,
past 16
when you
hours,
have one of
20
your
hours,
police officers on duty, what is the maximum number of hours as a policy? I would think that this would be a policy by either yourself or previous directors or by law.
Yeah.
So what is the number of, or the level of optimum hours an officer is allowed to work before he or she is replaced? or should be replaced?
Yeah, well, I believe that if an officer is held back, because a lot of times they could work up to 24 hours, and if they work 24 hours, they need that day, the next following day off to rest and recuperate. They can't go into a 48-hour, work.
So you would literally say an officer could be on shift for 24 hours
Sometimes
straight
in
through
exigent emergency circumstances,
and still
you find some
be
officers-
able to perform optimally?
Oh no, not being able to, the quality of their work is going to start to, and that's why you need some time for them to take some breaks, and you need to give sometimes for for a meal break, but you need some time to within that hour, and that has happened sometimes during, when I used to be in narcotics before, sometimes where you have to tell the officers to stand by and rest a little bit, but they're still on the clock, and it's
Okay.
happened, and that's
Chief-
why I said.
Chief, can I also ask you to please defer to the Colonel? Colonel, can you please respond to the same question?
And like the chief saying, we have those circumstances where there's a homicide or there's a case that requires us to work through, and yes, there are days that we don't come home till a day and a half later. However, I know that with the chief's policy prior to this issue coming up was always to my operations, the patrol was recommending to them that nothing more than 12 hours so that they have enough rest to come back for the next day. But that's optimum that we would prefer. But however, depending on shortage of shift and etc., emergencies, that's where we allow for some wiggle, but 12 hours usually is our.
So is this a policy, a written policy?
I believe it was a policy from the chief directive. I'm not even sure if it was in written form, but
I think
know
in
that
this
was-
case, if it was a written policy, it may have to be resurfaced and shared with the entire department, Chief, because obviously we're concerned about the police officer on duty and making sure that he or she is readily available and prepared to continue to serve and protect the community rather than going with diminishing returns in terms of their ability to provide the service that they're providing our people. So I think that let me follow that up then, because if there may be a written policy, there may not be. So Chief, what is your way forward in possibly in addressing this situation?
Well, I agree with the colonel. That when it comes down to the amount of hours, I don't recall putting a directive out and saying 12 hours, but 12 hours is certainly a good number too, because after 12-hour shifts, you want to be relieved, and your quality or your capability to carry on and for security purposes as a police officer with the kind of threats you could face, can be compromised. But sometimes, again, like I said, as the colonel had mentioned, sometimes you can go 24 hours, and sometimes we've gone 48. But that supervisor has to watch for that officer and make sure he takes a break or gets some time to get some
But I'm
rest.
hearing, Chief, that this is based on extenuating circumstances. So the question here is, as it applies to this police officer and other police officers who have exceeded the 12-hour work shift that you say is perhaps a maximum an officer should actually work on the job, how many of our police officers have actually exceeded that level? And is it a result of extenuating circumstances, not just a regular work environment and replacing an individual, but as a result of extenuating circumstances? Let me move on because I'd like to allow my colleagues to also ask questions. Chief, you were given just slightly over $1 million, under $1,100,000 for overtime for fiscal year 15. Now, what are you tracking as of today? How much have you already obligated by virtue of overtime?
I haven't brought I don't have the figure with me in terms of the.
Does your acting ASO know exactly what the figure may be?
Well, our Bureau of Services chief, who has the ASO with me, okay, so then she probably has that information. She
What's the
can come up.
accumulated overtime hours today? Chief, can you please invite her up?
Dor, can you come up?
And if she can identify herself for the record.
I'm the acting ASO, Dora Flores.
Please, the only mic. And please identify yourself for the record.
I'm the acting ASO, Dora Flores. Sir, as of paper netting February 7th, we did expended the $1 million that was appropriated for the department.
Okay, I asked this question specifically because your fiscal year 16 request is requesting an additional $1 million just for overtime alone. And Chief, that additional $1 million translates into hiring, recruiting 28 additional law enforcement officers or police officers who you can actually add to the force. And I think that during the course of our deliberation on the 15 budget, that was the focus in terms of the discussion, is how many individuals, police officers, will you be able to recruit over the course of the next fiscal year? And now you've already reached that $1 million threshold. What is your plan for the balance of the fiscal year on overtime?
I brought the latest, that's dated today, the personal monthly strength report, and this can be a copy for all the, for the senators here to
Please.
see the manpower strength of GPD in terms of the filling of 323 sworn police officers, and there's 11 other additional positions that we're trying to move up, and then of course the civilian staffing too.
That excludes your new recruits.
These 11 other positions are going to be are going to be police officer trainees.
How many recruits do you have in the present cycle?
Present cycle, we have about 14
So does the 14,
for the current cycle.
the current cycle,
About
you have
15. We have
15 individuals.
police trainees.
Is that number included in the 323?
Yes, it's included in the 323. The breakdown of the police officer trainees, because you can see that they've increased, is 48 police officer trainees already that we've pretty much hired. And that includes those that are still undergoing training right now at the academy, at the police academy right now.
So in light of that, Chief, by February 7th of this year, which is four months and 2 weeks into the fiscal year, you've already reached a threshold allocated for overtime for GPD. You just said that you recruited 48 new officers,
48 police officer trainees, that's correct. Yeah.
48 additional police officers. So what is your plan for the balance of the fiscal year on overtime expense?
Well, the overtime plan that we submitted for the budget for this budget fiscal year, and I think did you bring the overtime? Well, Dora can provide the overtime plan. Part of the overtime plan is to list limitations on certain positions on their overtime. You know, and it's going to be it's supposed to be filtered down from all commands to the operations, and the ones that draw the most of the overtime accumulation, both operations from Investigations Bureau and the Operations Bureau, which consists of patrol, to include operational units that fall under me, the Criminal Justice Strike Force, and the Executive Security section. This overtime plan lists limitation, an amount of OT that each position is limited to. I know that I've pretty much, especially when this news came out of that officer earning $50,000 in overtime, we are staying on top and making sure that each of the overtime that is revealed is scrutinized to ensure that they're sticking with the overtime plan. The colonel assists me on that when he looks at the operations and investigations bureau and overtime there, and I have the assistance of staff from my special assistant, who's looking at the Criminal Justice Strike Force that's operational under me, and the Executive Security. So I think what I'm saying is I'm relying on the command staff as part of this plan to minimize overtime that is only necessary, and hopefully there aren't no peaks, and that can easily happen in the line of work that we do as a police department to keep the community safe.
Chief, I think the discussion, the nature, Colonel Sayama?
Yeah, I just want to, as the chief was talking about 48 police officer training, I don't want it misunderstood that that's 48 police officer trainings we've hired within this fiscal year, because that's actually the number of all police officer trainings, whether it be 2 years ago, up to date. So because I'm trying to understand your line.
Okay, so you have 14 that are training at the moment.
We have 14 that's currently on training.
How many have you brought on since October?
8 that came up to train. Nine that are currently awaiting training. So we have the 14 plus the 9, so 20, 24, 23 that will be hopefully hitting the streets after training. So that's the numbers that are current for this. Currently have the title police officer trainee is a title that's given to an individual who's hired upon entry, and then after they meet a certain requirement, then they do apply for police officer 1. So that's where some of the confusion may lie if you're looking at that particular position.
Okay, let me just say this, and then I'll yield to my colleagues. I think that when we talk about overtime, it's being able to manage the resources and stay within a certain budget, but not at the expense of public safety for our community. And I think I need to make that clear, because that's one of the reasons why I mentioned that $1 million in overtime, taking that $1 million and investing it in recruiting additional police officers and eventually placing them on the field, an additional 28 police officers that could conceivably be brought in with $1 million and put out in the streets and be in uniform, serve as a deterrent to crime and protect our community. That is the route that I certainly would recommend that the department take. But not, with regards to overtime, it's not at the expense of the safety of our community. So please understand that, ensure that we're clear on that particular issue. Vice Chair Ada?
Thank you. I just want to express my concern about this overtime. The dollar aspect of it is something to be concerned about. But my larger concern is the fact that these officers are required to make snap judgments, and if they're not alert, I'm afraid that they're going to make the wrong judgment and see a little head come out the corner there and try and blow it off, because they're starting to hallucinate from being on duty. So I really think that it's unfortunate that the media is focusing on the dollar aspect of it, but I'm more concerned about the ability of that officer to be able to be effective. I mean, telling me about a guy being on for 36 hours, I would imagine at that point he probably couldn't hit the side of a barn with a shotgun. So, think about that. Even the military has standards. No more than 12 hours, and if he has to go longer, at least you got to put him to bed for a couple hours and then put him back on. But I'm very curious about this officer, that racked up all the overtime. How long a period was he on, at any one stretch? And so I think it's important to monitor that, not just from the standpoint, I'm concerned about the dollars, but I'm more concerned about his effectiveness. Was it? Which one?
Who's up?
Senator McCready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple questions here, and I know you're going to get drilled on this overtime issue. When Senator Rodriguez asked you the question, and I don't even know if it's a question, but a statement came from you that you take full responsibility of everything that happens in your agency. So me leaving this public hearing today, or this oversight hearing, would feel much better if you just was to say that I made a mistake with the overtime, I admit I was wrong, move on, and never let this happen again, and if it does happen again, consequences. Would that be something that you're willing to say publicly, that you made a mistake, you admit to the wrongdoing, and you have to move on? Because if you're not going to move on from it, or we're not going to move on from it, then, like they said, the safety of the public has been compromised, and as we speak, there could be ongoing overtime issues happening right now. So, did you make a mistake? Are you taking the burden of this, like you said earlier, that everything stops with you?
That's correct, Senator. Everything starts with me. The buck starts with me, and I take full responsibility. Actually spoke with my public information officer because a lot of media, wanted to request an interview regarding my response, and I said to provide them my response that I apologize, to the people of Guam. I take full responsibility for the amount of hours my officers are working. I don't want them working long hours and overtime. I like to see more officers more officers added to the police force. That's an ultimate goal of every chief of police, to increase the size of the police department and try and find ways to I'm constantly approve for police officers to rest and take off and refresh so that they can be ready and professional to work the next following day
So
when they come on
you
shift.
take full responsibility, you admit that you made a mistake, and this will never
Yes.
happen again.
Yes, and this won't happen again. And I fully take full responsibility for the mistake of not catching, the amount of overtime that this police officer made, and won't happen again.
And just one last question, going back to the 12 officers with the court mandate, that was supposed to be paid, if I'm not mistaken, maybe the chairman can help me out, on March 2nd, correct? No later than March 2nd? March 15th. Okay, so we're at March 25 today. Do we incur any penalty costs or interest every day that we're not paying that?
I bet you that there are going to be some of that penalty because, a court order is a court order, and we're
Yeah.
supposed to pay that.
So I think that would be good to project
Yeah.
to the committee and to the chairman of appropriations that exactly what the cost is going to be.
Okay.
And the timeline that you're paying off, I might have missed it. What's the timeline that we're going to pay those officers off?
Well,
The court order one?
Well, the 12 officers want to pay them, and I believe there was some work. Did we submit already? We submitted to them. Right? 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. It's about $36,000 and stuff that they presented to me, and I believe we presented it up to BB Mar, the front office, because we really need to pay the 12 officers to make sure that they're taken care of.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Victory. Vice Speaker Cruz, and then Senator Blas.
Thank you very much. Chief, I agree with Senator Ada about I'm not concerned about the money. My concern is, and even if you had an SOP that said 12 hours, I understand that as management, it depends on the situation. If it's a situation where it's a traffic accident and somebody died and you have all your investigators out there and the person's been taken to the hospital already and all you're doing is doing the measurements, I can understand going past the 12, past the 16 hours. In a murder situation where you have the assailant or the alleged perpetrator in custody, having extended hours to do the investigation might be tolerable. My concern is with the safety of the first family and the lieutenant governor and his wife and their children if they're being secured. Because it seems to me that after 12 hours, are you going to be able to run as fast? Are your senses as clear to look out on each corner about what is happening? That's a completely different situation as far as I'm concerned, and even brings to mind, did I hear you say that you have executive security under your direct supervision?
That's correct, Vice Speaker. I have executive security under my direct supervision.
And how many of those individuals on executive security have training in executive security?
There's a number of them. I don't have the exact figure in terms of the type of executive protection training that they received.
Do you know of any of your officers that have certification as executive security?
Yes, sir. All those assigned to the government house are all trained in that, and we call it VIP training. They all
Where were they trained?
trained by our folks as well as Secret Service.
Okay, well that gives me some relief.
Yes, sir.
But I'm just concerned about the number of hours, and when you're going past 12 and 16, and as you said, 20 hours, I was listening. I know the rest of them were talking, but I heard the 20 hours.
And Vice
so I'm
Speaker-
just saying, it really is unsafe for whoever it is that they're trying to secure to have somebody who has been having to look all over constantly for 20 hours, to have your senses that.
And I agree, Vice Speaker. The longer the hours this person was made to work, have to work those hours, the longer it can compromise his judgment in particular situations. And that's why it's actually caused the front office now to reevaluate just what they can do in terms of, there's some discussions with the chief, the OIC of Executive Security, who's a sergeant, who's going to be having discussions with me, a meeting to take a look at the number of personnel out there. What are the ways where we can prevent this from happening again, where one executive security officer accumulates that many hours, or works that many hours, to reduce those hours.
And just as it relates to the overtime, I know you and I have gone through this many times. I mean, it was a year ago that we had the Senator McCready bill of the 600,000. We kept fighting over that, and I kept saying, but you need 2 million, and you guys overruled me and somehow managed to get it back down to 600,000. And then we had a special session to get the 2 million, and I had to steal it from, Tina at Tourist Attraction Fund to get it paid. And I kept, we need to be upfront. And if I was to run back and, play Jon Stewart and take all of the clips of the various hearings last year about your confidence that you're going to be able to live within this 1 million, and that's all that you want, and I was offering 2 and you wanted 1. How confident are you that for this next 8 months, what is it that I'm sure now that I think she said for pay period February 7th, so we have a whole month that's not been covered. So actually that was only the first quarter, October, November, December, well, first January also. But we have a whole month of overtime that hasn't been covered, and we have all the rest of the year. I'm sure there's going to be a special session called very soon. I'm looking at him, we're going to be probably 600,000 again. But what is the number that we should look toward for the rest of this fiscal year for overtime?
To be effective on the overtime budgeting, because again, our department, there's so many things that can affect the overtime, per each pay period or monthly. I need the support comes from the command staff, from the colonel, and from everyone else who are watching who works those OT. If it's a police officer 3 versus a police officer 1, the rate is a little bit lower in managing the overtime. And we've always said that we've been looking at some trends, and it's always about $1.9 million. I think I've said one time, $1.6 to $1.9 million in expenditures for overtime. That's actually going to be some of the discussions that I'm meeting with the finance team to take a look at the overtime trends. But we are being, of course, we are being taken very seriously as appointed directors of our agencies to manage our overtime, to make sure that if we can minimize it through, again, strategies like increasing volunteers coming over, volunteer police reserve officer, or every other kind of way to mitigate it, to reduce the cost. That's just the way that we're doing it now.
But you very proudly proclaimed that there were 2 divisions that are under you, the SWAT team and the executive.
The Criminal Justice Strike Force and the
Strike
executive.
Force and executive. Yeah. Who reviewed the pay stubs over the last 5 months for the executive force?
Oh, well.
Yeah, I mean, you claim to have direct supervision of them. Isn't that your responsibility to look at it and say, how is it possible that this guy did 20 hours a day for the last 5 days?
And Vice Speaker, when I'm reviewing a lot of these timesheets and overtime, when I have the assistance of even my staff, obviously the system didn't work in the signal to detect that hey, there's one officer is starting to develop a trend of accumulating more overtime than other officers. That system didn't work. So obviously, we're really looking at another way.
How could you
Yeah.
how could you have missed that?
Yeah.
When you look at a timesheet and somebody is working 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, that you couldn't spot that. I can understand if it was 3 days this last week that one officer worked 11 hours and 13 hours and 10 hours, you might not spot that. But I tried to figure it out, and I couldn't even figure at 24/7 how we could have gotten to the 9,000. I couldn't figure out and so it was glaring. I just, when I received the FOIA, I just picked it up and I looked at my staff and I said, am I seeing things wrong?
And Vice Speaker, we're, transparency. You got our documents. I mean, you spotted it from that particular section. I sometimes have to worry. I'm worrying about not just that section, every other section in the department, just to make sure, because we've had in some cases not only one officer in this particular section, but in other areas of the department that racked up a lot of overtime. And it's one officer, no matter what section they work out. That's just not what we want to do. Is have someone
I
rack up
understand,
so many hours.
but I'm just saying that someone has to take responsibility for that, and you.
I said I'm taking responsibility.
You are the one that oversaw that, and trying to figure out what we're going to do about the rest of the year. The question that's been asked. If you had told me last year you wanted $2.2 million for overtime, we would have budgeted the 2.2, like I kept saying that I think you're going to need, but you didn't. So we took the leftover money and we created the public safety pool to have you, Chief Joey, Mr. San Augustine decide which ones of you are going to hire more people. Out of that $6.3 million pool, how many new officers have you picked up in this fiscal year? Because those 13 you picked up before that.
Vice Speaker, I don't have that exact figure of how much, how many that we picked up. As I mentioned, when we have these police trainings of 48 police trainings, I actually took count that not only did we pick up 48 police trainings, because I have the names of the trainees we hired within the past 4 years of but we also include a lot of reemployments too, and then pick up on some civilian staff that.
Yeah, I'm talking about police officers in the last 5 months. When we gave the 6.3 in this pool, it was for that purpose. It wasn't being utilized, and so I authorized them to take 1.7 for the prison locks.
I'm being informed it's about 24 police officer trainees within the last 6 months. 24 positions, police officer training positions.
And optimally, how many should you have, and why isn't the number more than 24?
Well, again, I said everything is about every chief of police wants to increase their manpower. Everything is about funding again, just to make sure that
we created the $6.3 million pool so you could hire more people because we were trying to address this overtime. Why weren't we asking for that money to pick these people up? And then we get into this. You and I have had this discussion for now 5 or 6 years. This bias against using Balea graduates from GCC. I don't understand why you can't take a Balea graduate who's done the 5 months in the Balea training and put him through 2 months of an expedited training for specific GPD stuff. you guys insist you have to take them from the very beginning to the very end, and unless I'm mistaken, a number of your officers are part of the cadre that teach these individuals up at GCC, because when I go to the graduations, it's not just Joey at the judiciary. I see your guys in uniform being part of the cadre teaching these guys.
Actually,
why are we not just taking the people from there and doing a specialized 1 month, 2 month?
Actually, Vice Speaker, we've had in the past, receive individuals who graduate with a Blas certificate from GCC, and they were working in the private sector for about a year and a half, nothing related to police or security. So we have to put them through what we call an advanced police officer training program to orientate them to our general orders and police operations, because the signals that were being given, and an individual who took a Balea Balea program up there at GCC, it's been out for over a year, would have to go back to GCC and take that same Balea course again, and that's not conducive, especially they already have the certificate. You can't
I understand, but what I've been talking to you about this for years, is why we weren't picking them up sooner. We keep graduating them, and I keep running into them, and they're my valet at Sandcastle, or parking a car, or being security at the outrigger, and I'm saying, after you've gone through that, I don't understand. Off record, I'll tell you what I think the bias is, but I'm just...
We're competing with other law enforcement and public safety agencies.
But I'm just
Some of them
saying...
have beat us to the punch.
No, but the thing is that they specifically went through their training to try to work for you guys. Yeah. And it just... I'm concerned about that. And so I'd like for us... I don't know when. I imagine you're going to talk to the fiscal team tomorrow, and I'm afraid we'll probably be called into special session on Friday to deal with the overtime. But I'm hoping that you and whoever your new ASO is going to be, since Odie has gone, that we will have a better number of what we need for overtime, and a much better plan on how to use the 6.3 that's there to take the 24 to 48 or even 80 or 90, so that we no longer have to have such large overtime expenses. Because really, Chief, I mean, we've gone through too many of these hearings, and I keep trying to impress upon you, all you have to do is be honest with me, and because you're the only one that I keep trying to give money to, and you're the only one that keeps telling me no. And these guys will tell you yes. But I know that I need the security that you provide out there, and so just be honest with us so that we know how much we're supposed to put aside for the very important work that you and your men and women do, because we want to be able to pay them adequately, and also pay them on time when they run up this overtime. To hear that it's a month behind already or 5 weeks is very disconcerting. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Vice Speaker Cruz, Senator Blas, Senator Torres, and then Senator Morrison. Senator Blas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, I need to go back to the number of, units, if they will, that are under you. What are they? Executive security. Who's under you?
Executive security.
Okay.
And also the Criminal Justice Strike Force, is directing under me, under the Office of the Chief of Police.
Do you have people in federal task forces?
Oh, also Federal Task Force, Homeland Security Liaison Officer, right? And Federal Task Force.
Okay.
Yep.
How many total officers do you have under the Chief's office?
There's probably about 30 police officers that are assigned to me.
How many in executive security and how many in criminal justice strike force?
Probably about 20 criminal justice strike force officers, and there's probably about 13, about 13 executive security. I'll get the exact numbers, but it's roughly around that
Okay,
range.
and for the sake of wanting to be able to expedite this thing, and I'm just interested. Give me a write-up on what Criminal Justice Strike Force does and who they report to and what case. I basically want to know what they do, where they go, who they report to, okay, and who crosses the T's and dots their I's on their police reports. Okay, so if you can get that to the chairman, okay, and that way we can always bring that up at the later hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Blas. Senator Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Berdallo, there was one phrase that you used that I thought was so regrettable during this whole proceeding. You used the term unsolvable problems. And certainly there are no unsolvable problems when you have a team of experts like you do and you have the backing of the community and this legislative body to give you the resources to help you get over those problems. So I certainly hope that you'll rethink that mindset about problems within the crime lab and the department being unsolvable. As we look at this whole issue, and I concur with a lot of the sentiments that have been presented today, but what I do want to impress is that if you have matters of policy, there are ways to deal with these situations. And I know that, I know the nature of executive security, and I also know the nature of 24-hour detail. As a past manager of an agency that had that type of mandates for its facilities. But there are also within policies, within policies there are ways to rotate, there are recall type of things. And what I do see is although we are thinking about the necessity of certain types of security and the necessity of calling back people to perform excessive hours of work, there is a propensity for abuse also, and I see these in agencies where the rotation is not reasonable and where the rotation is not practiced, and I just want to point that to make that point to you, because we certainly don't want to have a situation where you don't even the playing field and the risk to one individual or a pool of individuals is disproportionate to the risk to the rest of the agency. But in oversight hearings in the future, please don't come and use that term unsolvable problems, because I think that that's the most regretful thing that I've ever heard coming out of the head of an agency. And I just want to point that out to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
very much, Senator Torres. Senator Morrison.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, do you have a overtime management plan in place at this time?
Right now, the overtime plan, Doro can go ahead and provide. We always submit it with our budget, budget documents.
Okay.
So we can.
I certainly agree. There's no doubt that GPD needs that flexibility, and given the mission that you guys have in front of you, I just wanted to ensure for the committee that as we move forward and help the department to address their needs with more officers in the streets, I know the whole goal is to offset some of the overtime with that resource, but that is not necessarily the case, and it's shown based on your trend of up to 1.5, 1.9. I mean, even though we bring on more officers, you never know, it may drive up over time. There may be different scenarios out there. But is there a way that we can look at providing the committee a potential projection of savings if we bring all these folks on board and we were to either stagger hours or the flexibility of relieving these officers, that you can at least give us scenarios that could be savings within overtime, And that way there could also be options for the community to redirect to maybe more recruitment. If we're seeing that is working, that maybe we can redirect or reprogram for more officers on the streets and have you manage these hours a lot more better.
There's some discussion, Senator, especially the Colonel and our staff have been discussing with the Lieutenant Governor regarding what are some of these tasks that, like we're still responding to, like a non-traffic, crash that, was an additional task that we investigate. So there's a lot of sometimes been some discussions and looking at other things. We've had some discussions. There was the security company is looking at the 1019s or the funeral escorts we do and seeing what are some of the things that ties some of us down so that we're actually lessening the amount of work that we could have and really focus on the more essential type of work that the police department officers have to do.
I agree, Chief. I'm glad you're looking at that situation. I just want to ensure that if we can have information that can help you. I mean, you guys know best what's going on in there. So we know we're moving to recruitment. We're putting more officers in the streets. We just want to know if that really is showing a successful trend. They're bringing more officers on the streets, therefore relieving some of the duties, and having that flexibility that maybe, we can better reprogram. I mean, at least have that flexibility within the department to have that reprogramming effort to bring in more officers a lot more sooner than we think and plan ahead better. If we could show that, because right now you're showing a trend of 1.5, 1.9, right? And right now we're picking up more officers, so it would help, at least with me, know that this is going to offset the overtime in some respect, and if we show the success of that, that the department can have that flexibility to keep moving in that direction to continuously bring up more officers. I certainly not going to say that we're going to completely wipe out overtime, but I'm at least in agreement that we can just keep moving in that direction and fill those vacancies. Again, I'm glad there's an overtime plan being put in place here, and seeing maybe starting with officers. What was the highest at one point that you had officers or out there? And right now you're at 340.
Well, we had 300. I mean, it was fluctuating. We had something within 2011, within the last 4 years, it went from 3,006 sworn officers, 3,009 sworn officers, and then 295 sworn officers, and then now we're up to 323.
What was the highest? I mean, you guys been in department.
Back
what
in,
was
back in the 90s, and this is probably further early out, we were up to 480 officers.
Wow.
And we've 480, and our lowest ever was when the early out took effect, and at the same time the economy was dwindling. We went as low as about 220.
Okay, at that peak at 480.
Yes.
What was the overtime at that time? Was it good to say that it was a lot less, or we had that flexibility because you had more?
It's hard to say.
I'm not too sure about that in terms of whether overtime we ever had any overtime problems. I'm sure that with that number of police officers, you had a lower population back then too.
Right.
We have a higher population that increases every within the period. The census shows an increase of population, so that sometimes has a little bit of an effect too in crime, in terms of the crime. So, and the report card is as with the increase of the police department, or where it stands out, just what's our success rate in reducing crime, and the amount of cases that have been closed or cleared, the clearance rate. But a lot of it, again, like I said, with 400 plus officers at the time, and you had a lower population than you have now, sometimes there may have been some areas where you had the flexibility to not have a busy night, or a busy shift.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Morrison. I do have one follow-up question, and this is in regards to the police reserve stipend. What is actually due to our police reserves, and how far back are we? And when do you anticipate paying that
Senator,
obligation.
right now, we're currently waiting for BBMR to release the $8,822, and that will roughly pay November of 2014.
That would pay for the month
Of
of
November.
November.
Up-
So what is your accumulated obligation to our police reserve officers?
I do not have that answer at this time, sir.
We can get it
Please.
to you, Senator. You know, a lot of things too is that each of the reserves, they got to fill in, they got to send in the reports up to make sure they want to get paid, especially if they go over
But
the
Chief,
42.
Chief, is
Yes.
this $8,822 reflects being current up to November. We still have December, January.
Yeah.
And in terms of at least recognizing what that obligation is.
Yeah.
And then processing it and when it's actually signed off by BBMR and when it's signed off by, and the checks remitted by DOA, may be a different story. But if it's never submitted to BBMR or to DOA, it will not get processed or it will not even be considered.
No.
So, I mean, these are our police reserve officers.
That's right.
So you don't right now have a timeline in terms of when that's going to be paid out?
No, sir.
No, we don't have a timeline. I'll be discussing this also in tomorrow's meeting.
Okay, Chief, just to, thank you very much, colleagues, for this oversight hearing. Just to recap some of the deliverables, Chief, there was a request that the efforts for maintenance in terms of any of the requests that have been submitted to DOA/the Judiciary of Guam between 2012 and 2015, that we get copies of the invoices and the receipts. Okay, that was one of the requests that was put forward. The other one was any documents the GSA sent since February 13th, since the appointment of Captain Santos as the OIC, as it applies to the crime lab. So those are two deliverables. Chief, we can stay on track in terms of the bi-weekly reports on the Forensic Science Division and ongoing activities. The next date that a written report is due is April 8th. And then subsequent to that is 2 weeks later. In regards to the retro pay, just to reiterate, April 30th is the date that you're still tracking to pay the retro pay to your police officers. The overtime pay per the court order, that would be one of your items of discussion with your finance team tomorrow, and you will get to us, if not tomorrow, then by close of business Friday, on what, on a date, if by any chance they can define a date when that will be paid out, because that's a court order, court judgment. The other item is the promised compensation for civilian pay, approximately $250,000. You're going to discuss that as an item with your finance team and get us a date as to when the government of Guam can be able to close that obligation. The police reserve stipend, that's the third item that you will be discussing with your finance team, and hopefully you can get us a definitive date of when $8,822 will be paid to our reserve officers up to November. And then the oversight plan, there was a request that you submit an oversight plan for the balance of the fiscal year. I know you alluded to $1.5 to $1.9 million for the entire fiscal year, but I think it would be reflective of your actions as a result of what transpired yesterday and moving forward. So, Chief, that's a recap of our discussion this afternoon. Senator Ada has an additional request.
Chief, if you could just add to that list of documentation, I would like to see a copy of what the department's policy is regarding overtime. If it does not have a policy, then a document to the effect that as of this date, the department has no policy about overtime.
Okay, yes, Colonel Sayama?
Just to clarify one of the items, you mentioned GSA documents for the crime lab, but you wanted that for ECS as
No,
well?
any documents that were forwarded to GSA after February 13th.
Yeah, but that is in relation to crime lab and ECS or just crime lab?
Forensic Science Division, FSD. Okay, so it would be reflective of the evidence facility and the crime lab. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Yes, Chief.
There was one, I think Senator Blas was asking for the number of CJ strike force and the
I apologize, yes.
Yeah,
That was an
what
additional
they do,
request
right?
on the Criminal Justice Strike Force.
Yeah,
And
and
I
their
think
mission.
that if you can accompany
Yeah.
with that information, if you can provide us a copy of the executive order,
Okay, right.
that would be very helpful. Okay? Thank you, Chief and Senators. Thank you very much. And thank you, Ms. Flores. Thank you, Mage. Colonel, thank you for joining us this afternoon.